And how do, everybody, and welcome to the Real Estate Radio Show featuring Chris Lofthus of the Chris Lofthus Group at Keller Williams Realty in Boise. Well, Chris, we can say school has officially started, and I don't know what that does to the market, good or bad, but I think for the most part, people are still trying to get buttoned up with new homes or deciding to sell their home.
Yeah, Dave, it actually is a big deal because typically June, July are pretty quiet. The good news is that this year, June was a little bit better than last June. July was much better. I think it was 9-10% up volume level. But people start getting back in the groove, and you would think more people would buy during the summer, but it's typically not the case. Typically, the case is most production in real estate takes place in the fourth quarter. To get the kids back in school, even all the way through Christmas. So this is a really big time of the year for us in our industry.
So if you're looking to sell your house or you're pondering it and you're saying, okay, kids are officially in school now. Got one more break. I guess it's, Labor Day weekend, right? Something along that line. But what are some kind of your mental checklist, things you should be going, if you're going to sell your home? What's your mental checklist?
Well, the biggest thing we do is we try to explain to people, because they do, they start talking about selling their houses now, especially with inventory levels being down, 2,300 or so in Ada County. But, I tell people, especially going into the fall happens so fast, football starts. And so I start telling people, a lot of people look at houses on the weekend, but people want to watch college football. They want to watch NFL. And then the holidays come up. So it just kind of creeps up on you. And I try to explain to people, you got to realize that you have to have your house prepared to show. And so, you have the kids home on the weekends, but that's typically when you get the majority of the showings is on the weekends. So I kind of, forewarn people that you're when you list your house, there's some shifts you have to make to understand the fact that people are going to want to come through your house. So you're not going to, you need to be aware to make plans for the weekends to kind of get out.
Okay. Are you a fan of staging?
Yeah, I'm a fan of staging. It just depends, I talk to people all the time about, the majority of the houses we go into are obviously lived in, and so people have furniture. But in a perfect world, you'd have people move out of the house and have a professional stager come in. But that's not typically what would happen. But we like to do some light staging. Just make sure we declutter the house to just make it look less lived in, if you know what I mean.
You're listening to Chris Lofthus of the Chris Lofthus Group at Keller Williams Realty, Boise. Just some ideas if you're getting ready to sell your home. Chris, in our opinion, one of the best in the business. What's the first thing a potential seller sees? Is it the driveway? In their mind, they come in, you're taking Claudia and myself in to look at a new home. What are we going to see first? So if I'm getting ready to sell my home, I really want to start with that.
Yeah, number one, we talked about this with Burton a couple weeks ago, and how important, the special areas of the house are very important. Obviously, curb appeal is number one. Landscaping, that's by far the number one thing. I couldn't tell you how many times we've pulled up, people will look at a house online on the MLS and look at it and say, hey, we really want to see this house. Jerry takes them out there. They don't even want to get out of the car. And, we have an obligation. We just called the person, told them to leave the house. And the people are upset. They said, they didn't even come in. But the fact of the matter is, it's such a big deal. Curb appeal, second, I would say kitchen is number two, and obviously the master bedroom, master bath. But when people list their house, it's like the declutter thing. It's such a big deal because people just they look into it. They look at you have pictures on the walls, all this type of stuff. The more you can get off and make the house look more open, the better off you're going to be. And
Chris, explain the concept of that, because you've built it as your home, but they need to be able to look and say, hey, our couch will fit there easy. We'll put Billy's big mural up there. Right. I assume that. I'm asking you.
No, that is the case, because people do look at it that way, and they say, they don't, as much as people say, well, we love our pictures of our family. Well, if you're going to sell the house, you really should depersonalize it as much as possible. A lot of people don't believe in that. I personally do. You're exactly right. People come in, it's a big deal with room size, living room, People do buy houses. They have their own furniture and everything, and if the stuff won't fit in the master bedroom, I guarantee they're not buying the house.
Chris, I assume you're pretty honest with people when they call and say, hey, I want you to list my house. You say, I'm going to go through, and I might say some things you don't like,
right?
But my goal is to sell your house, not necessarily to be your best friend.
Well, Dave, this goes back to, you and I discussed this too, and I think that, you have a little bit of different attitude towards it just because I think of the industry you're in and you understand, you've been around it. But people have a tendency to make it very, very personal, obviously, and they make it very emotional. And the less emotional you can make the sale or the purchase of a home, the better, because you start making irrational decisions. Just like we were talking with Aaron and Van from Concierge Legacy a couple weeks ago, we discussed, with those guys, and they said, people make rash decisions, they make emotional decisions. The market starts to crash or whatever it is, and I guess it just goes back to the more of, I guess they kind of treat it like more of a business or professional and say, you know what, let's go to the professional and have them help us make the right decisions.
I'd encourage you to reach out to Chris's team. Go on the website. It's Chris Lofthus, and that's ChrisLofthus, ChrisLofthus.com, or it's contact us at CLG, as in Chris Lofthus Group, Eagle.com. That's contact us at CLGeagle.com. You can also reach out to them at 350-6228, 350-6228. I'll give you an example. I reached out to Jerry Kelly and said, okay, we've been talking about it on the show. Can you run some comps? Let me see where my house is. And I know we've got a new guest coming on, so I'm really excited about this as far as financing the American dream. But I looked at it and said, okay, give me some ideas about where my house fits, what it does. And I mean, Jerry was very professional in terms of saying, here's this comp, here's this is what I think from our experience. Obviously, you're going to have to go through this, and this. But your team really jumped in and got stuff done.
Right. That's the one thing, the professionalism portion of it. And like our next guest, you talk about my team and everyone that's kind of works with me. But in general, if you look at the team aspect of what we do, we're going to be honest with you and say, what, here's the comps. We're going to show you exactly, some of these custom houses, they're very hard to put a price on. But for the most part, when you're in a subdivision, you can pull comps and explain to the seller. Typically they don't like what they hear right now, because everyone wants, everyone's house personally is worth more than they really think. But the case is, like, for example, your neighborhood in Paramount, it's pretty, there's enough sales in there to go to you and Claudia and say, look, Dave, here's the deal. Here's these 4 sales in the last 3 months. Here's your house, very comparable house. So when you look at it in that light, it's pretty easy to give you a number on a house. One other thing I wanted to bring up, so our next guest, Vince Medina, and this is another portion of having the team aspect and value of a house. Vince Medina from American Financial Network is going to talk a little bit about lending, and I think that the lending portion of our job is so important, especially when you go to sell, because you're like, for example, you and Claudia sell. You're like, what are we going to buy? So you probably want to have a good idea, because I tell people all the time, I warn them, I said, let's get with somebody and say, if we sell our house, and what are we going to do with the proceeds? And someone says, well, I'm going to sit on the sidelines for right now. And the biggest thing I would tell people right now with real estate is that the craziest thing, just don't do it. I've watched clients try to guess the market, and even professionals, guys like Warren Buffett, you just can't guess the market. So I guess the whole point you talk about Jerry Kelly is to get really professional, good, solid advice from your realtor.
Absolutely. And Chris, we just got a couple of minutes in this segment, but real quick, as far as, so if I'm getting ready to buy a home, so what are some things we talked about? If I'm getting ready to sell, personal items off the wall, make sure your curb appeal, elements like that. If I'm getting ready to buy, what are a couple of things I should be prepared for in my mind, getting ready before I pick up the phone and call you?
Well, the first thing we tell everyone is to get with a lender. So I would like that exactly. We're going to talk to Vince Medina here. He's a senior loan officer, production manager over at American Financial Network here in Boise. And, get with them and really find out what you can afford, what you want to afford, And then the second step would be, once we kind of narrow that down, is really narrow down what you want in a house, And Jerry and I talk about this all the time. You see people, we take them out driving around in the car, and they go, what about that house? And you say, well, it would have showed up. We're not looking at it because it didn't meet your requirements. The master bedroom could be on the second level. Maybe there's not a fireplace in the master bedroom like you like. So anyway, I would say those are the first two things. Get with a good lender, and then really find out your parameters and where you want to live.
Yeah, and I think depending on how many kids you have, or if you have kids,
right,
where do you want your kids to go to school?
Well, it's a big deal too, and you talk about it around here. And I was talking to a builder of mine just the other day, and we talked about the difference between being, in Meridian or being in Eagle or being in North Boise. It's a big difference when you start looking at schools. You start looking at what high school, middle school. It's a big deal, and you can just around here it's not. I guess around here in Boise, it's you cross one road and you think you're in a whole different, you're in Meridian instead of being an Eagle, or you're in Boise, just go down Shannon a half a mile, boom, you're in Boise, and you're in a totally different school district.
Well, and I think just like my neighborhood, there's literally a grade school right across the street from our house. It's called Paramount. Some people, because it's getting so compacted in there, that even when they live in the neighborhood, they don't go to Paramount. So it's important also to check into that and find out as well, because they say, hey, my kid's going to go to school right across the street. So I think you make a great point on that. And obviously our motto today is back to school. I mean, kids are now officially in school. We're talking about getting your home ready to either sell or buy, and different questions. And Chris, that's what this show's about. Good information. Yeah, if somebody's looking for a realtor to buy or sell, or looking for a lender, we want them to reach out to you, or in the case with Vince today. But at the same time, you want them to have a good information so their experience can be outstanding.
Yeah, and that is kind of the whole point of the show. When you and I, we started doing this, I guess we're 23 shows
we're almost
in now.
A year into it, believe that.
So you look at that. Yeah, the whole point of the show is that we bring guys on here like Vince and like the other vendors that we have. They're all on our website, and you find them under the vendors list, or preferred vendors list. But our biggest thing is when we talk about a transaction or talk about remodeling your house, like Burton, or whoever, and you start talking about doing those, things, just get with the right person, get with the professional, because it makes the whole atmosphere of whatever you're doing, whether it's a real estate transaction, whether you're dealing with banking, or whatever you're doing, it just makes it a whole lot easier when you're dealing with a professional. All
right, Vince Medina, who's a new member of our show from American Financial Network, will be joining us. A couple of pieces I want to ask him about is some buyers have asked me, look, I had a short sale, I filed for bankruptcy, I've been foreclosed. Do I ever have a chance of getting a loan again? And I want to ask Vince, hey, is there hope for these people? And I got a feeling there is, so stay tuned. More to come on the Chris Lofthus Show. It's featuring Chris of the Chris Lofthus Group at Keller Williams Realty, Boise. We will be back with more right after this timeout.